Hello, everyone. This is Sean from the Soccer Nostalgia blog. I have the pleasure to interview Mr. David Stuart of the Scotland Epistles football magazine. Mr. Stuart is a former fanzine writer and co founder of the Scotland Epistles football magazine and the co author of two books on the Scotland national side, along with Mr. Robert Marshall. Mr. Stewart has appeared before on a podcast discussing the matches of the Scotland national team. In anticipation of the Euros group match between the two nations, for this interview, we take the opportunity to look at the match history between Germany and Scotland. This is an interview that's separate from a podcast series. This video interview will serve as a companion piece to a written blog presentation on the head to head encounters between Germany and Scotland. Hello, David. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to do these with you as well. Thank you.
So let's go back in time and look at the match history between these sides. The very first encounter between these nations was on June 1st, 1929, in Berlin. That ended as a 1-1 tie. In the 1930s, they would also meet only once. On October 14, 1936, this time at Glasgow, Scotland defeated Germany 2-0 with a double from James Delaney. For Germany, the manager was the legendary Sepp Herberger, who would still be the manager when the sides meet in 1964. So we're talking 28 years. Bear in mind that this was not only the first match on Scottish soil and the first win in the series, it would also be the last match involving a unified Germany until 1992. For obvious reasons, it would be another 2 decades before the sides meet. This time, as West Germany, Germany hosted Scotland at Stuttgart on May 22nd, 1957. Scotland came away with an away 3-1 win. This was the first away win in the series. And in 2 years, on May 6th, 1959, at Glasgow, Scotland defeated Germany 3-2. So, what's the takeaway from these early encounters between the nations?
I suppose that if you go all the way back to the 1929 one, first of all, it's Scotland's first overseas trip. So didn't seem as though there wasn't any Anglos in the squad. I think they kept it just to a Scotland football teams. But even at that, you've got two St Johnstone players, two St Mirren players, Airdrie, Kilmarnock. So it wasn't a proper national team, shall we say. It wasn't maybe a full national team. And saying that, the St Johnstone player, Sandy McLaren, is still the youngest goalkeeper ever to play for Scotland at 18 years. But it was the middle game. They'd beaten Norway 7-3, then drew 1-1 with Germany, and then beat Netherlands 2-0. The 1936 one, the controversy surrounding that one is that the Nazi flag was flown over Ibrox where it was taking place. The controversy is probably looking back, it probably wasn't as controversial at the time because that was the Germany state flag at that point. The German team did the Nazi salute to the crowds and things like that as well. But again, at the time, it wasn't a big deal in some ways. It was Jimmy Delaney that scored the double. He's one of only two players that was able to straddle the war. He played for Scotland, before the war and after it. He was at Celtic before and Manchester United after the war as well. The 1957 one, it wouldn't happen nowadays because on the 19th of May, we played the World Cup match against Switzerland, won that 2-1. Then the 22nd of May, we played this game against Germany, which we did really well in, beating them 3-2. And then the 26th of May, it's a World Cup qualifier again against Spain, where they could beat 4-1. You can't imagine that happening nowadays. You would never. You can imagine the double header, but you would never put a friendly in the middle of that. In 1959, there's some British Pathy filming of that as well. John White, on his debut, scores within 18 seconds, puts Scotland 1-0 up. Andy Weir and Motherwell scores in the 6th minute, then Germany pull it back. I mean, it's all 5 goals came in the first half, but I looked as though it's really, really enjoyable game. It was to and fro. It was a young Scotland team as well. You know, John White was making his debut, as was Andy Weir, and I think there was a couple of others. No, it was a good performance.
Yeah, and we should mention West Germany also had a young Uwe Ziller who would still be around in the following decade when the sides meet. We come to the decade of the 1960s, and the first official matches between the nations take place. By official, I mean World Cup qualifiers. The sides would meet 3 times in this decade. The first was a friendly on May 12th, 1964. We mentioned Sepp Herberger was the manager of Germany in the 1936 match. This would be his penultimate match as West Germany manager. This West German side, the familiar face that we recognize would be Uwe Siller, captain of the team, and the likes of Reinhard Libuda, Horst Zimaniak, Hans Tilkowski, who would be the goalkeeper to the 1966 World Cup final. Scotland, we have the likes of John Gregg, Billy McNeill, captain of the team, Alan Gilson, and Dennis Law, among others, in the side managed by Ian McCall. So this match ended as a 2-2 tie, as both Uwe Siller and Alan Gilson scored a double for each side. In fact, Germany had a 2-0 lead in the first half when Ziller scored in succeeding minutes. But in the second half, Scotland tied the match. Next, we come to the end of the decade and the crucial World Cup qualifiers for Mexico in 1970. On April 16th, Scotland hosts West Germany at Glasgow at Hampden Park. Scotland were missing John Hughes through injury and Colin Steen through suspension. By now, Scotland was managed by Robert Brown. And we have the likes of Tommy Lawrence of Liverpool in goal, Thomas Gemmell, Bob Murdoch, again, John Gregg, Jimmy Johnson. Captain of the team is the young Billy Bremner of Leeds, Dennis Law, among others. For West Germany, the familiar faces include Karl-Heinz Schnellinger, Bertie Vogts, Franz Beckenbauer, Gerd Müller, Wolfgang Overath, and Sepp Maier, who would actually substitute the starting goalkeeper in the second half. This match ended as a 1-1 tie. Gerd Müller had given West Germany the lead, but 5 minutes before the end, Murdoch scored with a long-range shot from outside of the box. We come to the deciding qualifier on October 22nd, 1969, with West Germany hosting Scotland at Hamburg. For West Germany, and let's mention now the West Germany manager is Helmut Schoen since 1964. For West Germany, for this match, we have the likes of Sepp Maier in goal, again, Bertie Vogts, Beckenbauer, Helmut Haller, Gerd Müller, Uwe Ziller captaining the team. And for Scotland, we still have John Gregg, Tommy Gemmell, captain Billy Bremner, Billy McNeill, Eddie Gray, and Colin Steen. This match ended as a 3-2 win for West Germany, who qualified for Mexico. Now, Scotland had actually taken the lead through Jimmy Johnson, but West Germany tied a match through Klaus Fichtel, and before Gerd Müller gave them the go-ahead lead. However, 2 minutes later, Alan Gilson scored once again against West Germany, and the match was tied. And it was in the last 10 minutes when Libuda scored a winning goal.
I think the May 64 game, obviously, Gilzine hits a double quite late in the game to give us a draw. The sad thing is it marks John White's last game for Scotland, because within a couple of months he gets struck by lightning and dies at on the golf course. It's quite sad. As to the World Cup games, they were big games. I mean, there's over 100,000 at Hampden, and they're all squashed in. You just see the footage and you feel the noise. But for many fans, it's a Bobby Murdoch goal right at the end, and it's similar a few years before with John Gregg had scored against Italy in the last few minutes in a World Cup qualifier in the '66 campaign. But it was a great strike. Bobby Murdoch is often talked about one of those players who should have got a lot more games for Scotland. But a lot of times he was seen as in competition with Billy Bremner, who was favoured over him, even though they both played together from time to time. Away match, I think that's the first time I have some memories of it being watched in my house, and watching it with my family, and just the sheer disappointment of it all.
It was one of the first matches that were televised, I imagine, right?
Yeah, there's probably been a few before that as well, many. But I just remember the whole disappointment because Scotland put in a great effort. They felt they had to win the game and get something out of it, and they go into the lead, and it's sitting 2 each. One of the strange things about the game is the whole pitch invasions after the Germans score each goal. There's a whole crowd of Germans on the pitch. I'm not just talking about one or two, but you're talking about
Yeah.
100 or so people running on the pitch. That just wouldn't be allowed to happen nowadays either. And there would be repercussions for that. And of course, it's always remembered for Tommy Gemmell getting sent off towards the end. But if you see, I think it was just pure frustration because at the Germany third goal, he's tracked back and he tries to take the German player out and misses him, and he goes on to score. And then Scotland are chasing the game. Gemmell's off on a run, and Haller kicks him more or less, and he just gets so angered by it that he chases after him, puts him right up the backside, and gets sent off. And that's it. We're out the World Cup. We're not going to Mexico.
West Germany would actually finish third at that World Cup.
Yeah.
So perhaps being eliminated by such a team was no shame. We come to the decade of the 1970s, and the encounters are friendlies. However, the important thing is that Scotland faced East Germany for the first time during this decade.
Yeah.
First two matches against West Germany are as West Germany is preparing for the World Cup that they will host in 1974. On November 14th, 1973, at Glasgow, Scotland hosts West Germany. At this point, Scotland is managed by William Ormond. Scotland also would qualify to the World Cup in West Germany in 1974. For Scotland, we have the likes of the Leeds goalkeeper, David Harvey in goal, Sandy Jordan, Danny McGrain, Billy Bremner still around, captain of the team, Willie Morgan, Dennis Law, Joe Jordan would replace him 2 minutes before the end, Kenny Dalglish, and Tommy Hutchinson. And for West Germany, again, we have the familiar faces, Bertie Vogts, the captain of Franz Beckenbauer, Uli Hoeneß, Günther Netzer, Grabowski. Second half, we'll have the likes of Sepp Maier and Jupp Heynckes making appearances. West Germany were in fact missing Gerd Müller and Paul Breitner through injury. as well as Wolfgang Overath, who was out because of the flu. And this was the match where Franz Beckenbauer tied Uwe Ziller with his 72nd appearance for West Germany. This match ended as a 1-1 tie. James Holton gave Scotland the lead in the 5th minute. Near the end, Uli Hoeneß in the 82nd minute headed in the equalizer. And also Billy Bremner missed a penalty kick in this match. A few months later, on March 27th, 1974, this time West Germany hosts Scotland at Frankfurt. And again, West Germany, you have the familiar faces: Sepp Maier, Bertie Vogts, Paul Breitner this time, Beckenbauer, Hoeneß, Gerd Müller, among others. Well, for Scotland, this time you have Thompson Allen of Dundee in goal, Sandy Jardine, David Hay, Martin Buchan, Willie Morgan, Kenny Dalglish, Dennis Law, Kenny Burns, among others. West Germany would win this match 2-1. Paul Breitner scored with a penalty kick in the 33rd minute. And just 2 minutes later, Jurgen Grabowski scored a second goal. Kenny Dalglish would pull a goal back in the 77th minute, but West Germany would win 2-1. A few months later, on October 30th, 1974, Scotland hosted East Germany at Glasgow at Hampden Park. And yeah, this was the very first encounter between the nations. Scotland would comfortably win 3-0 despite Jordan missing a penalty kick as well. Tommy Hutchinson scored with a penalty kick in the 36th minute. Kenny Burns scored in the 36th minute, and Kenny Dalglish in the 75th minute. In fact, Kenny Burns had come on in the 15th minute, replacing James Holton, who was injured. For the last encounter in the decade, it was against East Germany as well. On September 7th, 1977, this time at East Berlin, East Germany defeated Scotland 1-0. At this point, Scotland had almost qualified for the 1978 World Cup. The team was managed by Ali MacLeod. And we have the likes of Danny McGrain, Donachie, Masson, Gordon McQueen, Dalglish, Hartford, Joe Jordan, Macari, among others. The matches in this decade were just friendlies. So anything significant that stands out?
In the first one, I suppose it kind of cements the Jim Holton legend in some way. He's already scored in the World Cup qualifier to get us to the World Cup. He scores in this game. He only ever plays 15 games for Scotland, but because he played at the World Cup as well, and because of his stature, you would think he played about 30, 40 games, but it's only 15. But he's still beloved by most of the people who were around that time. In the second game in Germany, Erich Schädler is given his only Scotland cap. Now, he was the son of a German POW who settled in the borders area of Scotland. So for him, it was quite a thing. Your Scotland debut in your father's homeland. But it would be his only game for Scotland. But no, that's quite poignant in some ways. The East Germany at home game, that's when Graham Souness makes his debut. He's a couple of games round about this period, and then when he's with Middlesbrough, and then kind of disappears off the radar for a few years to come back just around about 78. And in the last one, big surprise there was that Alan Rough wasn't playing, so David Stuart of Leeds United played. And by all accounts, he was the best player on the pitch. He saved a penalty as well that night. But I think what happened to him was David Harvey came back in the Leeds side. So he lost his place at club. So he was never really considered again, which was a surprise because He, before Leeds United, was at Ayr United with Ali MacLeod. So you'd think he would have been inclined to play him again, but he never did. So as we know, Alan Rough went to the World Cup, as he would do, as number one. But that was it. I mean, the thing is, any time you take on Germany, more at that point, West Germany, it's always an open game. You always, it's not as though they play defensive against Scotland, so it's always good entertainment, I would have to say.
We come to the decade of the 1980s, and Scotland mainly faced East Germany during this decade. But the lone match against West Germany is perhaps the most important encounter as it takes during the 1986 World Cup. Early in the decade, Scotland and East Germany are in the same group for the 1984 Euro qualifiers. So on October 13th, 1982, at Glasgow, Scotland faced East Germany and wins 2-0, with John Wark and Paul Sturrock scoring the goals. Now, Scotland is managed by Jock Stein and includes the likes of Jim Leighton, David Narey, Alan Hansen, Willie Miller, Gordon Strachan, Captain Graham Souness, Steve Archibald, among others. For East Germany, the main name that stands out is Joachim Streich, a veteran from 1974, who is in the twilight of his career at this point. Then, in the following year, on November 16th, 1983, as both teams have been eliminated from the qualifying, at Halle, East Germany hosted Scotland. For Scotland, we have the likes of Richard Gough, Arthur Albiston, Alex McLeish, Willie Miller, again, Strachan, a young Paul McStay, Kenny Dalglish, and again, Steve Archibald in the side. East Germany takes the lead through Ronald Krier in the 33rd minute before Joachim Streich heads in the second goal in the 43rd minute. In the 79th minute, Eamon Bannon would pull a goal back for Scotland in a, like I said, in a match that was inconsequential for either side. The next match between sides would be again against East Germany. It would be a friendly on October 16th, 1985 at Glasgow. This was the first match following the tragic death of Jock Stein in a World Cup qualifier against Wales on September 11, 1985. This time, Alex Ferguson was the caretaker manager of Scotland. And obviously, for this match, there would be a minute of silence prior to the kickoff. For this match, Andy Gorham, substitute starting goalkeeper Jim Leighton in the 49th minute. This would be his first cap, and in doing so, he became the first Oldham player in 71 years to play for Scotland. For Scotland, we still have the likes of Richard Gough, Arthur Albiston, McLeish and Miller in center of defense, Graham Souness, Kenny Dalglish, Mo Johnson, among others. And this match would end as a scoreless tie. Now we come to the World Cup match against West Germany. This was the first match between the nations in 12 years. This match was on June 8th, 1986, at Querétaro in Mexico, as the sides were in the same group for the World Cup in 1986. At this point, West Germany is managed by Franz Beckenbauer. You have the likes of Harald Schumacher, Briegel, Karl-Heinz Forster, Pierre Litbarski, Lothar Matthäus, Magath, Rudi Feller, and Klaus Allofs. And Karl-Heinz Rummenigge would make an appearance 15 minutes before the end. For Scotland, we have Jim Leighton, Richard Gough, Willie Miller, David Narey, Souness, Strachan, and Archibald, who would play his last match for Scotland. as would Eamon Bannon, and in fact, as would Graham Souness. This match is remembered for Gordon Strachan's celebration after he opened the scoring in the 18th minute. We all remember his foot on the advertising board and all that. Germany would shortly thereafter tie the match through Rudi Feller, and early in the second half, in the 49th minute, Klaus Allofs would score the winner. What is remembered from these encounters in the 1980s?
I suppose the biggest surprise in the first game against East Germany is the fact that Jock Stein stuck with Hansen and Miller after the debacle of the USSR game in the World Cup. Of course, within a few games, that Hansen would be dropped completely and forgotten about. Obviously, Jim Leighton makes his debut in the first game as well. It's also our only win in that campaign. But at that point, because it always seemed as though Scotland were geared towards World Cups and not Euros, we'd lose out in the Euros pretty badly, and that was just another one. We actually ended up bottom in the group, and that's the away game where it's a lot of snow on the pitch. East Germany win it, and by that end up with 5 points. We end up with 4 points in the group. Pretty desperate stuff. I suppose the game that Fergie took charge against East Germany, friendly, ended up nothing each. I think that shows the problem with Scotland at that point. There's very few goals coming, and as we get to the World Cup, that's what happens in the end. And I suppose that's the story of Scotland for many years. Not a lot of goals coming. As to the World Cup game, obviously we'd narrowly lost the first game, so we had to make an impression this one. It's quite an exciting game, actually. I watched bits of it this morning. There's a lot of chances for both sides, a lot of, incidents. But it's that thing, if you go ahead against Germany, you've got to keep things tight at the back to hold on to that. What is it, 5 minutes? Strachan scores in the 17th and Fowler in the 22nd minute, and that's a lot of times a downfall against Germany as well. When we get our noses in front, they always seem to get that goal back fairly quick. But no, if Scotland had played like that in the game against Uruguay, we would have done better and we would have beaten Uruguay. But I suppose all that effort and that heat is why you don't have the likes of Souness playing that next game, and because he was deemed to be unfit, unwell. But no, it's pretty exciting game to watch. Plenty of chances for both sides. Pretty entertaining stuff.
So we come to the decade of the 1990s, and we have the reunification of Germany. In fact, Scotland hosts East Germany on April 25th, 1990 at Glasgow, which is one of the East Germany's final matches as East Germany before the unification in the fall. This match for East Germany, we have some familiar faces like Matthias Zammer, Ulf Kirsten, and Thomas Doll, who would soon make their impact in the unified Germany team. For Scotland, for this match, they were preparing for the World Cup in 1990. They lose this match after Alex McLeish gives away a penalty kick by fouling Kirsten in the box, and Thomas Doll would score from the penalty kick. And for Scotland, we have the likes of Gorham, Gary Gillespie, McLeod, McLeish, Goff, Gary McAllister, Stuart McCall, Mo Johnson, amongst others, and John Collins as well. And Scotland is managed by Andy Roxburgh at this point. The next match between the nations would be in the finals of the 1992 Euros in Sweden. This time, Germany is as unified Germany, and this is the first time This is the match in 1936 that they're playing as unified Germany against Scotland. At this point, Germany is managed by Bertie Vogts, the future Scotland manager. In the team, you have the likes of Andy Brehme, Thomas Hessler, Matthias Zammer, Jurgen Klinsmann, among others. For Scotland, we have the likes of Gorham, captain of the team, Gough, McAllister, McStay, McCall, Brian McClare, Ollie McCoist, and Gordon Dury, among others, in a side managed by Andy Roxburgh. Germany would win this match 2-0. Karl-Heinz Riedler opened the scoring in the 29th minute. In the 47th minute, we have Stefan Effenberg on the right side attempting a cross and Maurice Malpass deflecting and lobbing the ball into the Scottish net in this match at Norrköping in Sweden. A year later, on March 24th, 1993, Scotland would host Germany at Glasgow. And Scotland, still managed by Andy Roxburgh, would include the likes of Tommy Boyd, Brian Irvine, Alan McLaren, Duncan Ferguson, John Collins, among others. For Germany, still managed by Bertie Vogts, we have Thomas Hessler, Lothar Matthäus, Thomas Doll, Karl-Heinz Riedler, and Jürgen Klinsmann, amongst others. This time, Germany would win again with Karl-Heinz Riedler scoring again in the 20th minute. In fact, this was the first away win for Germany in this series. Be until the end of the decade where the sides met again. On April 28th, 1999, Germany hosted Scotland at Bremen. By now, Germany is now managed by Erich Ribbeck. You still have Lothar Matthäus and others like Dietmar Hamann, Oliver Bierhoff, Thomas Struens as some of the familiar faces. For Scotland, managed by Craig Brown, we have the likes of Neil Sullivan of Wimbledon in goal, David Weir, Colin Hendry, Tommy Boyd, Callum Davidson, Don Hutchison, and Paul Lambert, among others. Scotland would win this match away from home. Scotland would win this match away from home with a goal in the 65th minute through Don Hutchison. What's the takeaway from this decade?
Obviously, the 1990 game, you probably look at Scotland have peaked too early again, coming up to a World Cup. They had a very good qualification process. Then they beat Argentina, and then they come up against East Germany and get beat 1-0 at home. The interesting thing was that Andy Roxburgh had arranged 2 matches. The night before, Scotland B played East Germany. Sadly lost 2-1 as well, mind you. But the list of players in the B team was, I'll read it through, it's quite interesting. Brian Gunn, Norwich City, Tom Boyd of Motherwell, Stuart Monroe of Rangers, Dave McPherson of Hearts, Colin Hendry, Man City, Derek White, Celtic, Eric Black, Metz, Peter Grant, Celtic, Brian McLeod, Manchester United, Robert Connor, Aberdeen, John Robertson of Hearts, and the subs, Kevin Gallagher, Pat Nevin, and Ray Stephen. So it was quite a big team they put out for the B team as well, but they lost 2. I suppose the other thing to note is that on the 1990 game against the first team is that Gary McAllister makes his Scotland debut. A great play he would prove to be for us. The Euros, again, that's another terrific match to watch. I mean, the fact, apparently Scotland had 17 attempts at goal against Germany's 15. But it's that thing, we hammered them for the first 20 minutes, but The score still sat at nothing each, and that's the problem here. We just couldn't finish. Brian McClare, who scored, I think, 25 goals for Manchester United that season, just couldn't finish at that. Every chance it fell, it just didn't fall right for him. It's just unfortunate, and I suppose that's the thing. You've got to take your chances. I mean, we also had 14 corners against Germany, having two, and couldn't put anything away. Germany did hit the post twice as well, so could have been four each. It could have been 4-0 to Germany, but it was one of those matches where you think, how the hell did we come away with nothing from that? That's ever the story, isn't it? The friendly against Germany, that goes down as everybody in Scotland, they always talk about Duncan Ferguson hitting the bar with an overhead kick. You know, that really was the pinnacle of his Scotland career. It's a bad goal to lose as well. It's a lofted ball that goes up in the air, and Craig Levine's looking at it. He's looking at it, and he misheads it. He never even gets his head to it, and Riedler just comes in and pokes it in. It was also during that period, a lot of Scotland games were at Ibrox to fill up the ground. They've given a lot of tickets away to kids. So all you hear in all the coverage of these games around about 1993 is school kids. Funny in some ways. As to the victory in 1999, that did seem to come from nowhere, because the month before we'd lost to Czech Republic at Celtic Park in what would be Gary McAllister's last game. He got booed off the park and such. Terrible strip, that Salmon Pink one, but we won. And it wasn't just we had one chance. We had quite a few good chances and, deserved a bit of luck and to win a game, I would have to say.
We come to the millennium. In the first decade, the sides only met twice, both in 2003, as the two sides were in the same group for the 2004 Euro qualifiers. By now, Scotland is managed by former Germany player and manager Bertie Vogts, while Germany is managed by Rudi Völler. So the first match is on June 7th at Glasgow. And for Scotland, we have the likes of Rab Douglas in goal, Stephen Presley, Gary Naismith, Paul Lambert, captain of the team, Christian Daly, and Kenny Miller, among others. For Germany, we have Oliver Kahn, captain of the team in goal, and others like Jens Jeremies, Michael Ballack, Miroslav Klose, and Freddy Bobic. Freddy Bobic would give Germany the lead in the 23rd minute with a header. Scotland would tie the match in the 69th minute when, after a quick free kick, Miller got the ball on the right and shot past Ali Khan. A few months later, on September 10th, 2003, Germany hosted Scotland at Dortmund. For Germany, again, still managed by Rudi Völler, we have the likes of Ali Khan captaining, and again, Michael Ballack, Freddy Bobic, among others. For Scotland, you have Rab Douglas in goal, Jackie McNamara, James McFadden, again, Stephen Presley, Christian Daly, Paul Lambert. Paul Lambert would actually be replaced by Maurice Ross in the second half, but Maurice Ross would be sent off 20 minutes later. So this match, Germany wins 2-1. Freddy Bobic scores again in the 25th minute. Michael Ballack scores the second with a penalty kick in the 50th minute. Neil McCann pulls a goal back in the 60th minute. But Germany qualify again to the Euros ahead of Scotland. Surprisingly, only 2 matches in this entire decade.
I think one of the big takes from the first game is just that Bertie Vogts has come in and I hadn't started very well. I think we thought we'd played really well. We were worse for draw, we had chances. And you thought, well, maybe Bertie's getting it right, but wasn't quite. But it is a quick free kick, as you say. Normally you'd expect, oh, we're going to take this, somebody's going to have a pop at goal, but no, Colin Cameron took it, dead quick, caught the Germans on the hop, and Kenny Miller scores. It was just a pity we couldn't do anything further. As to the second game, there was a lot of gamemanship from the German team, shall we say. And it's probably better known for its after-match talk than the actual game, where Bertie Vogts is talking, and all you can hear is Christian Daly shouting, cheats, cheats, F cheats. Bertie Vogts, Christian, I suppose it's one of those things that makes Christian Daly a legend to Scotland fans, because there's some photos of him on the pitch where he's kind of to the Germans, just kind of die. He was riled up for that game, shall we say. We didn't qualify for Euros, but we lost out in the playoffs to Netherlands that time. Again, got to take your chances.
We come to the decade of the 2010s. And again, surprisingly, the sides met only twice, as again, they were in the same group for the Euro qualifiers, for the 2016 Euro qualifiers. Now, at this point, Germany are World Cup 2014 champions and obviously are the favorites to advance from this group. The first match is on September 7th, 2014. Germany hosts Scotland again at Dortmund. For Germany, you have Manuel Neuer in goal, captaining the team, and others like Toni Kroos, Marco Reus, Mario Götze, Thomas Müller, among others. Germany managed by Joachim Löw. Scotland is managed by Gordon Strachan by this point and includes the likes of Steve Whittaker, James Morrison, Darren Fletcher, captain of the team, Stephen Naismith, and Grant Hanley, among others. Germany would take the lead through Thomas Müller in the 18th minute. But in the second half, in the 66th minute, Ikechi Anya tied the match. But just a few minutes later, in the 70th minute, Thomas Müller scored the winner for Germany. Exactly the following year, on September 7th, 2015, Scotland hosted Germany at Glasgow at Hampden Park. And again, you still have Gordon Strachan managing Scotland and Joachim Löw managing Germany. For Scotland, you have Alan Hutton, Charlie Mulgrew, Sean Maloney, Scott Brown captaining the team, James Forrest, and Stephen Fletcher of Sunderland. For Germany, you have Manuel Neuer, Emre Can, Bastian Schweinsteiger, Mesut Ozil, Toni Kroos, and Thomas Müller, among others. Thomas Müller would score again in the 18th minute and give Germany the lead. However, in the 8th minute, Maloney's free kick from the left side was parried by Neuer, but rebounded off of Mats Hummels into his own net. But a few minutes later, in the 34th minute, Thomas Müller would once again give Germany the lead. But just before halftime, in the 43rd minute, James MacArthur tied the match. But Germany would take the definitive lead in the second half in the 54th minute when Ilkay Gundogan scored Germany's winner. And again, once again, Germany qualified from this group to the Euros. This has been the last match between the nations.
I think, as you said, Germany have just come off winning the World Cup, and Scotland go behind in the first match, Thomas Müller. and you're thinking Avalanche. I think particularly in the style that Germany won the World Cup as well, some great players, great play. But no, it doesn't happen. And then Ketchianya scores his goal. And it is, if you can just hold on, we can get a result here. But within minutes, it's blown, it's gone. But Thomas Muller is just that kind of player, if you don't pick him up, he just, at that point, he just had this ability to wander, didn't he? And defenders would lose him and then suddenly be in the right position. In the second game as well, he scores and he sets up goals. I think we played very well in both games, but I also think that Germany had a bit more, a greater side, had the better chances as well, if we're honest as well. And we're always chasing our tail in the other game as well, always having to equalise. But no, it was a pity, as I say, you get a goal against Germany, you need to keep it tight and you need to make sure you don't let them back in the game too quick, and that seems our downfall. I suppose one of the reasons we haven't played them in so long is the whole Nations League setup. If you consider that, we haven't been in the same groups as them, so there's less friendlies. So you're probably not going to have friendlies against the likes of Germany. I suppose we did play France recently in Netherlands, but they're not going to happen as often, I suppose, with Nation League games. And of course, we've got one left coming up.
In anticipation of this Euros match, let's look at the balance between the sides. In the early going, Scotland seems to have the edge when you come into the 1960s. But these 1969 World Cup qualifiers are kind of the reference point, I think, where Germany takes over and they become, obviously, at this point, they're becoming one of the best footballing nations in the world. We come to the 80s and there's more encounters with East Germany, but that one match with West Germany is the one that's remembered for obvious reasons. And by the 1990s, Germany is a stronger team, though Scotland did win that friendly in 1999. And again, post millennium, Germany has had the edge. So, how do you look at the history and what do you expect for the match on June 14th at Munich?
I think, as I said, the history is about taking your chances, and we haven't done that. They're always open and good, exciting games, particularly the competitive ones. But Germany are a strong team. They're way ahead of us, and they have been for decades. And there's a different strength and mentality to a German team to a Scotland one. But I'm looking forward to next month, and we'll see how that goes. Obviously, the German team seem to be improving, but it's a lack of competitive matches for them. My other worry is, have Scotland peaked too soon? We've lost a lot of games recently. The confidence is a wee bit, down, but I still think our players can come good and can get a result. I'm looking forward to it. And to be opening the whole tournament again is a great thing as well. Looking forward to that.
With that, I'd like to thank you for this interview and to let everyone know to read the main blog article as well for more detail. The link is included on the video upload description along with our respective contact information. In addition, on the following days, I also upload the compendium with all the lineups and any available photos and videos from these matches. So, David, thank you once again and hope to continue these discussions on Scottish football history.
Thank you.